It took me almost 13 years to get all my stuff taken care of with the VA, and that was a very difficult thing to do, but a very worthwhile thing to do because I can give guidance and help people that are struggling. And if they're local to me here in Texas, I know a couple of amazing people down at the VA that were very helpful for me to get the final kick over. The other thing that I have to remind myself is that if I don't go through my shit, I'm always going to be in my shit. So that is kind of it's a hard thing to start dealing with, but in general, if you don't go through your shit, you're never going to get through your shit.
So welcome back, everybody, again to the Military Retirement Podcast. Today we are sitting with Lisa Benson. Lisa is a veteran, Army veteran, served 9 years, and normally we have people who have retired, but that's not a big deal. We want to talk with Lisa and get her perspective as far as transitioning out, because we also want to be able to direct people who have been in 4 or 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, who are getting out without retiring, to have some kind of footholds when you're making that process. So with all that, welcome to the show, Lisa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about all the great things we have to talk about.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a good conversation from the little ramblings that we had before recording. So let me just start off with the end in mind, and what would make this interview a success for you?
If we have the chance to talk to veterans so that they know that there's an option out there, whether they're going to serve the full 20 or they're going to serve 2, 5, 7, 10, we don't know what they're going to do. But with the mission behind what I do in general is I want to be able to help veterans, because 22 a day is entirely too many. We know that number fluctuates day to day, and they got to know there's something more out there. And there's a lot of us have business skills and business things that they can do. And I want to be able to help them either find that or help them grow that.
Excellent. And so if you don't mind, I want to go back to the beginning when you first came into the military, where you were maybe in the world, like what physical place, where your mental state was at that point, and what was kind of the trigger that allowed you to then say, okay, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to raise my right hand and do the thing.
I was in my junior year of college. My parents got divorced when I was a senior in high school, but their taxes were still all together. I lived in Buffalo, New York. I forgot to add that part in. But that my parents were still together, or their taxes were still together. So on paper, they made too much money. So I was able to pay for my undergraduate education, or the associate's education, with money that my grandparents had given, tap and Pell and all those things. But when I got to my junior year, I couldn't afford it. I was going to have to go money in debt. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. You could stumble all those things that you are at 22 years old, or 21, 22 years old, and you're feeling lost. And my brother joined the Army because he needed to have some direction. He needed to get out of town. So when he joined the Army, I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that. And then I took the ASVAB. They told me that I could do the Language Institute. And when they told me how long that was, I was like, oh, is there a job with less time and more money? So I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to school to then come back to go to school. Is basically what my brain said. So that was at 88 Mike. So I was a truck driver. And I ended up being a truck driver instructor for most of my career, plus ANOC, BNOC, and PLDC. I did a little PLDC instructing. I spent a lot of time helping people make an impact, but I went from Buffalo, New York to Fort Relax in Jackson, which you could call it that. I don't know what anybody else's basic training's like. So it was hard, but it wasn't, it didn't kill me. It definitely put some direction in me. Then we went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So out of the frying pan into the fire.
Really exciting places I went to.
And what were your expectations coming into the military? I mean, you definitely have a family-oriented kind of military background. You know a little bit what was going on, but once you got in, like, what was the expectation versus the reality of military life for you?
There were moments that I thought, oh, this is way easier. This is like I grew up roller skating, and I was a competitive roller skater, and I spent a lot of hours practicing. My father was my coach. So I got the idea of what a drill sergeant was. These drill sergeants didn't necessarily line up as far as how hard my father was, but he also knew the buttons to pull. So I didn't think that it was hard, but it wasn't anything I couldn't handle, is one way to say it. But the other is that my expectation was that they were going to be screaming in my face from the time we woke up till the time we went to bed, because that's what every movie said. That's what my father did. So I thought that was the reality. It really wasn't. And then once you get past that induction phase, yes, when you do stupid stuff, we all know they get in your face. But as a whole, they don't. They're there to guide you, grow you, and stop you from making just stupid decisions.
Yeah, and along those same lines, were there any moments or a moment that was like a profound kind of learning lesson for you in your military career when you were serving?
There are a couple. There are some moments that definitely shook me to the core, which is probably where you're going with that. There was one when I was early on in basic training. As you can see, I have small eyes. I was born with them. That's just the way it is. And the drill sergeant stood in my face and asked me if they had to cut eyes for me to see. That was definitely a low blow, and it hurt. And I was going to prove to her, which I needed to. You have to have your drive, and she did what she did what she was supposed to do. I was going to prove to her that I was equal or better than anybody out there. And then when I was on sick call one day because my heel got torn up during one of the road marches or whatever. So I went into the chow hall, and this other drill sergeant was making me stand there and scream, because I wasn't one of his soldiers, so it was easy for him to do, right? Well, that drill sergeant, who was for another platoon in our company, but she came whipping around the corner to find out what was going on, and she tore him up and down one side and the other, and I was just like, okay, so she does like me. She does care. There is something more here. So I know that's not necessarily what you're saying, but that is a profound moment when you think this person doesn't like you because they're screaming in your face, talking nastiness to you. And then to turn around and see that they are actually your biggest ally. They were just doing what they're supposed to do. It's kind of cool. It definitely is different than what you would think of for the military.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like let the actions speak louder than the words kind of thing, where you hear people say things and everybody says everything. Everybody has a story behind what they do, and they have a story they tell themselves. But really, the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is what actions do they actually take? Like, what is the virtue in their action versus all the words that they're saying, really?
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that it's that way, but
the strength of their character, right? There's a whole statement on, she turned out to be a very amazing human being, and I've met so many along the way. Another one would be when we were preparing to deploy. I was in the reserves at that time, and one of the guys was a former tanker, and he just didn't think women should be in the military. So we had to practice like fireman carries and all this stuff, and there were 3 females with us and 6 males, and I was the only one that could carry him across the way. And he was like, and I won't say it totally changed his perspective, but he definitely had a different opinion on what women could do that he just didn't perceive. I mean, it was not the easiest thing to do, but I was definitely gonna give him the old thumbs up, like that boy, because he could barely carry me. So if I can carry him and he can't carry me, then we got a whole different story.
Yeah, and in that, it sounds like if you went into the reserves, it sounds like you made a couple transitions from the military, not just from active duty, but also just getting out completely and doing your own thing. In that, what steps did you take, or what kind of mental preparedness did you do before getting out? And actually, let's take it from both sides, like before you got off active duty, and then when you finally decided to hang up the uniform and do your own thing. I'm sure there was differences or nuances in the process, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, how early did you start? What was that mental preparedness? What did it look like? What kind of things were going through your mind?
The active duty to reserve was actually a very easy transition because I was going back to school. So I had the mission, the brain was already in the going to school mindset, which I would not have done as well in school had I not gone into the military, because I was not doing very well before the military, and I went from that to being valedictorian in my class. So there's some really amazing things that happened out of that. The reserves to getting out. Well, and my husband was active duty. He was going to stay the full 20, and he had gone green to gold. So there were a lot of things that when we discussed what was going to happen, we didn't know if we were going to have children at the time. We have fur children. We don't have real children. They are our children, so I'm not going to say they're not real children. They're not human babies. But we didn't know what was going to happen, and we've seen too many kids come through that lost one of their parents, and we didn't want to be that family. So, or both of their parents, because both parents deployed and something happened while overseas. So we decided that one of us would get out, and he was loving the military, and I was not loving the military as much. So I came out, went to school, and was doing reserves, and the reserves was amazing. And I had a great unit. And then that's actually where I deployed out of, was the reserve unit. And we did, we were 369 transportation unit out of Wichita, Kansas. And our home base was Fort Riley, Kansas, that we then deployed from. But transitioning back from that deployment into reserve life was actually pretty difficult. That was when we spent a lot of time. We were told, if you report it now, it's going to be 3 to 6 more months before you get to see your family. So any health issue, get out, go back home, and go to your local VA. Not understanding that because we didn't report it then, the process becomes that much longer once you're trying to deal with the VA. So it took me almost 13 years to get all my stuff taken care of with the VA, and that was a very difficult thing to do, but a very worthwhile thing to do, because I can give guidance and help people that are struggling. And if they're local to me here in Texas, I know a couple of amazing people down at the VA that were very helpful for me to get the final kick over, to get everything taken care of.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up about the VA, and then also the transition back from deployment back to the unit. In the reserves, at least in my experience in the reserves, I did a few years in the reserves. When you're deployed, you're on a different kind of title, like you're Title 32 in reserves back in the States or wherever you happen to be stationed at. And then once you deploy, you become Title 10, I guess, essentially, or something like that. You get active duty orders, basically. Yeah. But the process of reporting like injuries, or if you got hurt or something happened, there's a line of duty statement that you generally need to make for reserve duty. I don't know if they do that on the deployment orders as well, but yeah, that's kind of the nuance of reserves. Is you go on these orders for, say, 2 weeks or 2 months, or you deploy for a year, or deploy for 6 months somewhere doing peacekeeping missions or whatever. Every time you do that in the reserves, you come back and you get a DD-214, right? Generally speaking. So that kind of triggers a timeline where you have a certain amount of time before you can put in a VA claim, or if you have something wrong, you need to go report it up the chain and whatever. But yeah, it's critical to document that stuff, even if you're not on reserve duty and deployed. If you're active duty and something happens, like it's critical to at least start the paperwork, at least go see the doc and get something documented, so that you can then take that paperwork back with you and put that in through the claims process, whether you do it at the end of your service after 20 plus years, or you do it when you're ETSing or getting out after 5 or 6 years. So that's an important point. And if you don't mind me asking, what was the process that then took 12, 13 years?
So at some point they flipped my husband and my social security number. That was a big part of it. And they were saying that I was not qualified to claim because I was still serving. And he was still serving, but I was not. So we had to go in and get all that fixed. It was actually his retirement that got everything starting to flip. So I was fortunate. Granted, I didn't get all the money that I could have been earning during that time based on the disability claim, but I still had TRICARE because he was active duty.
Mhm.
And then the burn pit registry, I know you've told everybody, I'm sure you've told everybody to go make sure they fill that document out. Even if there's an inkling of, if a possibility of it, make sure that you are taking care of it. You are doing all the things you need to do to get those documents filled out, because in the long run, there's a lot of cancers and a lot of things on there that if you do end up with, your family could be taken care of because of it. But yes, it was a long process, flipping the social security number. And then I was fortunate because the window opened up for us to be able to get the insurance again, even if you didn't have a disability at the time. So I got that, and then took all my medical documents, and then everything kind of met in the middle. And I was very fortunate that it did meet in the middle, and I didn't have to fight as hard for as long as some of my family did from Vietnam that didn't get it till 5 years ago for their Agent Orange issues.
Right. How long did it take you to discover that they had switched the social security numbers?
It took about 6 years, and it was
Wow.
going, yeah, because they had to go figure out line by line by line by line, and it took me going to meet a nice lady named Jana over here at the VA in Temple, Texas, who is a VA rep, and we went line by line to figure out what it was, and it was a flip of the social security number.
That's
And they
insane.
don't know if it was me putting it in or if it was somebody just flipping it in the documentation, seeing Benson, and because both of our social security numbers are linked, it just is simple flip.
That's insane. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way for somebody who may experience that, and I don't know how common that is. It's the first time I've ever heard of it.
That's the first time I've ever heard about it, and that's the first time she's been working in the VA for 30 years, so it's an oddity. If it happens and your claim isn't working, you need to go talk to somebody. There's organizations that help you for free. Definitely use the ones that help you for free. Don't pay somebody to help you if you can avoid it.
Yeah, and I mean, I say it's a one-off, but then again, like over the weekend, over the live that we just did, there was a news story that we found about a guy who had basically been collecting VA money for a certain amount of time, up to like 100,000, and his whole entire documentation was falsified, like false DD-214, false everything. He never served a day in the military and was collecting VA compensation for however long to get to $100,000 worth of VA compensation. So
that's heartbreaking.
it's insane. It's insane, and that's why when you mentioned that,
we've got veterans out there that can't get access to the money in this.
Yeah,
that's
why when you mentioned it, I was like, huh, that's kind of strange.
At least both of us are veterans. Both of us served. We weren't in a position where we were hurting or anything like that. But as a business owner and a veteran, and you want to be able to tell other veterans you've been where they've been, and I now can tell them that I've had to fight with the VA, and it was they basically at some points just said that I didn't have enough documentation. And the bottom bin over there that's got the little yellow piece of paper, I'm not sure if you can see it in the back corner, that is full of all my medical records. Yeah. Copy everything. Keep your copies, duplicate the copies, give your mom a copy, so that if they say there's not documentation and they take your documentation, you have enough copies.
That's great advice. What other kind of advice would you give to somebody who's transitioning out? Say they're getting out in the next 12 months, and I know it's probably been a little while since you transitioned from the last time you transitioned, but what other kind of advices or things that you would say, like the foot stomp moments, or the kind of things that may come at you really fast that you kind of overlook? Anything that you would that you can think of that people need to pay attention to?
Year out, look at what they're offering right now through SkillBridge, all of those things. Take advantage of everything that they will pay you to do. If they're going to you're on active duty time and they're going to pay you to take briefings, go to the briefings. My husband, as he was processing out, because he's the most recent, so that's where my brain thinks, they offered him a position where he had terminal leave, which they don't call terminal leave anymore. He had terminal leave. He had 6 months of it. And he got paid by the Army and paid by an internship to go and help stuff with COVID, but it was still in the project management line of work that he wanted to do. So he is able we were able to bank quite a bit of money so that we could go, because I told you before the call, we're going to Paris and we're going to be on the beaches of Normandy for the anniversary of D-Day. And we were able to pay for that. No debt. We were able to come out clean. You know how a lot of us in the military, yes, we get retirement when we're done. We get this when we're done. We get that when we're done. But we also have all the debt we accrued while we were in the military because we manically spend or depressively spend. And then you've got to stay in to pay it off.
Right.
So if anything they throw at you, they're going to throw you courses at you. A lot of times, depending on the base you're on or installation you're on, you have the opportunity to do like a project management course or anything like that costs you $5,000 to $10,000 when you get out. Take advantage of it. It may not be something that you necessarily want to do, but you could learn about either what you don't want to do or how you can apply this into your whatever career you go into post.
And did you have plans already in your mind post-military life when you were getting out, or did you just kind of figure that out along the way?
I would like to thank my father for that. I was struggling with PTSD and didn't know that it was PTSD, and I joined a local roller derby league here in Austin. And I was playing roller derby and I was working and I was doing things. I was doing things that I would have done at 22 and 23. I just did them at 30, 31, 32, so that I could really learn to live my life while my husband was deployed. So I created a network of family that were able to support me on everything that I was doing and also be part of that transition so I didn't feel lost. Because I was definitely feeling lost. I was angry. I'm angry that from what I experienced while I was in, but also angry that my husband was going for his third time and getting, and then he got home and he was home 9 months and they're already prepping for the fourth time. So like there's a lot of things that were going on in my head that, yes, I wish I would have been a little smarter and done the courses. That's why I'm telling everyone else to do it. Because no matter what, you come out with a certification, you got your military experience. Most places will pick you up quickly. I do think that there were some times that I felt lied to during the out processing because, you're going to be employable. People are going to pick you up like that because you're in the military. They're going to understand this. They're going to understand this. You're going to get preferential this. You're going to get this. No. Sometimes in the grand scheme of things, it can hurt you more than it can help you, depending on who you are and who you're talking to in the hiring process.
Yeah, and we can kind of dive into that a little bit. Did you do any job hunting or anything like that after you got out, or did you just go straight into like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing, I'm going to start my own business?
I did some job hunting. I worked for some great companies. I worked for Bizarre Voice and a couple others that were all digital marketing focused. Mm-hmm. But I kept finding that I was not. My whole mission is to help veterans. It's been since I joined. I really had the heart of helping people serving those who serve. I want to help them thrive, not just survive. Like that's a big thing. That's my mantra each morning. And I want to. When I got out, I did the roller derby. I worked for some companies, and I went and got my master's in public administration and. We talked pre-call. I was hell-bent on helping veterans by fixing the system until I really started seeing how broken the system was. And it's really hard to fix something that's got so much red. It's taped together. So how much duct tape do you have? How many layers do you have to go through to get to where you need to go to? So I started helping and talking to some veterans and going into some veteran groups and just talking to people in general. But I started working for a couple nonprofits and some other things. And then in 2017 with roller derby, and I'd helped them with all their marketing, I was like, you know what, maybe I should do something more. So I started developable designs. And at first I was helping coaches so that I could help veterans. And in doing that, I was like, well, if I make enough money, because there's a lot of coaches out there. We all know that. There's a lot of people that are really qualified and really skilled. So they make a lot of money, and helping them market helps you make a lot of money. So then you can help veterans. And it was one of those coaches that said to me, why don't you cut out the middleman and just help veterans? So I can offer a service at a lower rate so that I can help veterans market their business. And that And if and I can help them in the beginning phases of coaching, but when we get into a bigger company and with 50 or 60 people, that's a little bit beyond my scope, and I'm more than willing to share that with another coach that has the ability to do that, as long as they don't gouge the veteran and they make sure to take care of them. I will always refer out if I can, if it's something more than I can handle. But at the crux of everything has always been, I want to help veterans. They often feel lost. My brother is a perfect example. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what he wanted to do. So that's why he joined. He stayed in 6 years. Went to Korea, went to Germany, served his tour in Iraq, and was still feeling lost. But he definitely refound himself, and he's super successful. Works for the SUNY college system in New York State, and it was an interesting thing to see when he had support, how well he was able to thrive. And we as veterans need to be that support network for each other as much as we can.
Yeah, it's definitely, transition in anything in life is definitely difficult. I feel like military transition, military retirement, and then the subsequent months and years after you get out of service and stop wearing the uniform, I feel like there's a lot of things that can happen that are good. And then I feel like there's a lot of things that can happen that are potentially bad, depending on how you're mentally prepared for the next step or the next phase. And so along that same kind of token, like emotionally, logistically, and you've experienced it yourself personally and also with your husband retiring, how has that affected your family life in general?
That's an interesting one. That's a very interesting question. I think we're a little different because we don't have children. So we are blessed in that case, but there are moments where you don't know how to communicate what you're feeling. I think everybody has that, but you can't. I mean, there was a time when I first came back from deployment that my husband was going into work, and you know how you're used to the routine, so he would leave at 3:53 every morning, between 3:53 and 3:55. Well, he came back into the house because he had forgotten something, and the level of panic, I guess, was high. And then he came in the room to kiss me goodbye, and I broke his nose. Because in my mind, nobody's supposed to be and my dog was just as angry and everything else. So it was definitely, that was the moment that I knew I had PTSD and I needed to go get taken care of. But it was definitely I was not emotionally prepared. Nobody told me the signs to look out for PTSD. There's many other things that we could talk about, but nobody ever told you when you were leaving the military you were going to go through the cycles of grief and loss at all. You're going to go through the happy, the anger, all of those things you're going to go through. Even if you're the happiest person you ever could be because you're getting out, you're still going to go through those stages, and how you process them is going to kind of depict how the next few years are going to go in your life.
Yeah, I like how you bring up the 5 stages of grieving. And I think I just want to add on to that a little bit and say, yes, you're going to probably experience all 5 of those stages, and they're not linear. So it's not like, okay, step 1 is you feel this excitement, and then step 2 is you feel the depression, and then they don't go in order, and they also don't just happen once, right? It can be many, many iterations of the 5 steps of grieving. So
in a day,
in one day, right? So in that, if I can just tug on the string a little bit more, what were some of the first steps that you took after you had this realization that, like, maybe I need to go see somebody, maybe I need to talk to somebody? How did you then manage that after the fact?
I actually I was fortunate. We were outside of Fort Campbell, so I went on post. But where I struggled most with going on post, because they did recognize that I was a veteran, So even though as an 88 mic instructor, when you deploy as an 88 mic, that's always going to be your defining job. So I ended up being convoy security. So I shot the 50 cal, I shot the Mark 19, and a lot of times they didn't. The people when I was at Fort Campbell and you go through those sessions, the group, because they put you into group, they don't really put you into individual counseling sessions. I wasn't like the spouses because I had served and I had deployed, so I didn't fit in that group. And I wasn't like in the male mind of the soldiers that were at Fort Campbell, I wasn't equivalent to them because I had never really seen combat, but yet I had. And I felt like I was going back to that girl in basic training, trying to prove that I was good enough to be there, and that wasn't as healthy for me as it could have been. So I actually, after 3 to 5, it was 3 months. Yeah, 3 months, and I didn't feel like I was getting that kind of thing. I started doing meditation and journaling. It wasn't the best for me. It definitely went through a lot of things, so it was cathartic. But it took me a while to get back into going to talk to somebody.
How much of a gap was it? Like, were we talking about like a year or two, or were we
We're talking
a few
about 3
months?
years. 3 years
Wow.
of me just fumbling, and that's if I wouldn't want anybody to do that. I should have gone back and told them I would rather not be in group counseling. I need to talk to somebody one-on-one. So if I had anything to do to go over again in the history of my military and coming out, that would be it, is to, when I hit the struggle, hit the help button and say, I need something more than what I'm being offered right now. I'm fortunate because I do have a supportive family network. My husband did know what I had gone through for deployment, so there was that. My brother was home, so I had people that I could talk to that experienced it. Plus the older relatives that I have that were Vietnam veterans, I could talk to a little bit about things. So I did have a network. So I never felt alone and destitute, but I definitely wish that I would have pressed the help button sooner.
Well, and I mean, stumbling upon meditation and journaling, that's an interesting kind of perspective, because at the end of the day, like, yes, you need to go seek medical help or psychological therapy or something like that, which is, it can be a taboo word, and we're still kind of getting over that societal hump. But the fact that you turned to meditation and journaling as a way to kind of cope and kind of like figure things out, that's an interesting kind of left turn in your dealing with your struggles. And
I had to put the brakes on somewhere, and that seemed like the easiest way to put brakes on.
Did you just stumble upon that, or did somebody just recommend that to you? Or
I don't even remember. I wish I would remember, because if it was somebody who told me, I'd love to be able to say, this person told me to journal. But I definitely, I'm sure that somebody had told me along the lines, and one of the days when I was struggling and I just needed to talk it out, I just wrote it out, and that just started the process. I have, notebooks upon notebooks, and I actually don't keep them. Once they're filled and they've filled with that, all of that, I go burn them in the fire pit, because it's just easier for me not to keep that kind of emotion around, but also I don't want somebody to read it down the line.
yeah, I mean, everybody's got to make their own decision, right? And I guess that's kind of my point is, yes, you need to get help and seek medical attention, medical help, and professionals, but also, even in doing that, like, the majority of the work is your work to do, basically. So,
well, and that's what they're going to do, right? When you go talk to a counselor, that's the first thing they do, is have you start working through the layers of stuff. I think had I done it differently and talked to them, my journaling would have been it was very cathartic. So I'm not going to say that it wasn't, but there could have been intention behind how I was, the levels and layers that I was going.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate you going into detail on that.
Not a problem. Obviously, I've come to grips with all of it, so it doesn't mean that it doesn't bother me. I do know that through that was when I realized that can't watch certain TV shows. I'm not good at watching movies. I don't play violent games because all of that stuff starts to re-trigger those kind of things. I was watching, like, I think it was right when CSI came out and all those shows. I was watching that before I went to bed and couldn't figure out why I was having night terrors. And I won't say they were directly related, but some of the nightmares do start taking the form of the shows and the things you're watching. So I just pulled myself out from all of it, and it gave me that chance to breathe, sleep. I didn't, by journaling it out and not watching those shows, I didn't necessarily need sleep medication. Every so often, I have to take melatonin or Benadryl, but I don't have to take Ambien or something of the like. Right. Not that there's any issues with that. I just know that I never feel rested when I take it. So I'd rather not take it.
Yeah. Medication is, for me, it's kind of something I don't like. It's definitely something I don't like. I know there's a use for it and I know there's a purpose for it, but even the other day I was having a conversation with somebody and they were like, I took like anxiety medication for like 5 or 10 years, and the medication was only designed to be used for like a couple weeks at a time, and then you're supposed to like come off of it and then go back onto it. And I was like, yeah, your body is going to build up a tolerance. So yes, the medication is going to help in the beginning. Yes, it's there for a purpose. Yes, there's reuptake inhibitors and things that happen in the brain that turn off and turn on chemical responses and trigger chemicals to be produced. But at the same time, like over a certain amount of time, your body's going to build up the tolerance, and then you're going to have to take either more medicine or a different kind of medicine that's stronger. And then you kind of just spiral down this hole of relying on the medication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I definitely think it's definitely helpful. I'm of course not a doctor. I think it's helpful. The medication's there. There's a purpose for it, but also I think there's a human side of it that you have to kind of factor into and take into consideration of, once a week or twice a week therapy and talking to somebody and having a journaling exercise and mm-hmm. some kind of meditation or something like whatever happens to work for you the best, because it's not a one size fits all.
Agreed. And that the other thing that I have to remind myself is that if I don't go through my shit, I'm always going to be in my shit. So that is kind of it's a hard thing to start dealing with. But in general, if you don't go through your shit, you're never going to get through your shit.
With that, I want to ask my really strange, off the wall, esoteric question to you. It's way down the list of questions, but if you had an opportunity to go back and sit and spend like 30 minutes with your 16-year-old self, and not necessarily to go back and give advice or give stock tips or something like that, but just to sit down and have a conversation, where would that conversation take place, and what would the conversation look like?
It would probably be at the beach on Lake Erie. And one of the two, my grandparents both had cottages on there. And I don't know which one it would be, but it would be at one of those. And I would just sit with their feet in the sand and just talk about where they are, what's going on, but also tell them that they're enough. You don't have to prove to anybody but you that you're enough. So at 16, it would have been nice to know that. I know most people don't know it their whole life, but everybody is enough. If somebody tells you you're not, they're not the right people to have in your circle. And you don't need a big circle. I think we all know that now in life, especially with Facebook and all the other things. You don't need a big circle. You just need 1 to 2 to 5, a handful of people you can count on, and that's who you have in your life. And they don't need to know the ins, the outs, the everything. You can have different people for different things. You don't have to tell everybody everything. I don't need to know. I just was scrolling Facebook before we got on the call. I don't need to know everything. Don't need to know everything about you. But I want to celebrate your wins. If you need help up, I can help you up. I don't need another GoFundMe. All those kind of things. Like there's a lot of, I would tell her she's enough and she can just rely on the people that you want to keep in your circle, and the others can come and go as they please. And those people in your circle rotate depending on where you are in your life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you who's your your top 5 people in your circle, maybe what do they contribute to the circle and how has that circle changed, like maybe pre-military, during the military, after the military, how has that circle evolved, changed, people have left the circle or came into the circle?
When I left for the military, I had a group of people that were part of who I grew up with in Western New York. Are they still in my circle? They're in the bigger circle, the group that you want around you, but you don't have to know everything. I mean, I still talk to my best friend from kindergarten and good friends that I had throughout all my time. And they are my Facebook friends. And I kind of classify people like that. And there are people that I met in roller derby that were the same and throughout the jobs that I've had. But real good friends that I can count on would be my friend. Her name's Quintina, but I call her Q. She is my go-to for everything. She is my cheerleader. And this is outside of my husband because he is my biggest cheerleader and the one I talk to all the time, and my family themselves. But she is like, when I decided I wanted to start my business, she said, stop thinking about it, start doing it. So she was kind of the one that kicked me into shape on and doing that stuff. And I'm the godmother to her kids, and she's like the sister I got to choose because I don't have any sisters. So, and then and then I have Jen, which she was a derby friend of mine. We call her derby name was Trauma. She's another one, and my cousin Catherine. Those are kind of my 3. Then they're Rachel and Julie, which are Catherine's sisters, are also within that circle. They're just a little bit further out because they have kids and don't necessarily have the time. But we all spend time. We talk to each other. They're in my group. If I want to travel, they're who I travel with. Q and I go on 4 cruises a year. We love going. We go right out here out of Galveston and go to Mexico and then back, and it's a great vacation. We get to have fun, get to escape, and then we're back to reality. But those are if I could count on anybody, they would be it. I've got a really good friend, Ange, who I'm actually going to introduce you to because I think her mission's very similar to yours, and I think that would be a really cool. She's going to do a documentary on She Served Too, which is about female veterans, but also she wants to do kind of a drunk history style military memoir for people that aren't in her circle and start to network out and get people. But she has this goal on trying to basically bring the backside of what we do in the military out, kind of fun, telling the stories. Remember that time when, based on real situations that people around them can back up. So she was served with my husband at Fort Campbell, and she's been a part of our lives ever since. And we go visit her and spend time with her on vacation. Good people.
Nice. Yeah, I would appreciate that. That'd be a great introduction. I'm wholeheartedly invested in this thing about sharing information and putting information out in the world and decentralizing all the information that's out there.
Yeah, and she'll be able, and you might have connections, and she may have connections that you're able to kind of swap stories with and swap connections with. If not, she's also very dedicated to getting information and finding who she can talk to get the most real conversation. So it sounds like I'll connect you guys.
That'd be awesome. I appreciate that. Let me shift gears to mentorship and education. I know we discussed about college a little bit. I want to find out if there's a mentor or a couple mentors that you've had over your military career and then into your civilian career that really stood out, what kind of impact they had on you, or what kind of things what kind of traits did they show that made them such a successful mentor in your life?
Let's see. The first would be, he was my first sergeant when I joined my reserve unit. His name was Stephen Trong. He was one of the last people out of Vietnam, not serving in Vietnam, but children leaving Vietnam on the choppers. And he always, there was 5 of us that entered the unit at the same time, and he was always pushing me to be the best version of me that I could. So he would, if there was extra duties, I would be the first he would ask. One, because most of the time I'd want to do it because I was bored. And two, he knew it would get done right. So when we would go to an AT, I would be the admin person, even though I was the same. So I would get there 2 weeks ahead of time, get all the paperwork, do all the 6 month prep to get there. Then we would train a unit, reserve unit, or sometimes active duty and guard unit for 6 to 8 weeks and come back. So my typical AT was 3 months versus most people's is 2 weeks. And I had that ability because I worked from home pretty much from 2007 on. So I could do whatever I wanted to do for that. So Master Sergeant, which he eventually became Master Sergeant because of the way the unit restructured. Then there are some amazing people I met on deployment with 369. They were all the E7s. There was Sergeant Bullock, Sergeant Evans, Pomeroy, and I can't even, I can see her face, but I can't remember her name. But they were all from all different spectrums, and they just kind of admitted their shortcomings as they're all former drill sergeants and things like that, but they always said, this isn't where I shine and what I spent my time on. When there was a failure in leadership, most of the time I say most of the time, almost always they stood up and said, "Hey, I'm where the downfall was because I didn't understand what was going on." So I found that very admirable, and that's just it went along with the way my personal ethos were. So that it just compounded that being open, honest, and vulnerable when the shit hits the fan is the best way to get through the shit. And then people I met with my husband serving were Sergeant Major Johnson. He was first sergeant at the time. Leon Johnson and his wife Teresa. They showed me and my husband how you can make it through the military. You can make it through the deployments. You can make it through everything as long as you walk hand in hand, rather than one leading the other. And that was very important. And I took that as my husband and I talk about our lives. We don't complete each other. We make each other's lives better because we're in it. Because you should be a whole and complete person by yourself. And that's something that we learned from Teresa and Leon. And she was amazing as far as being in charge of the FRG, which I'm not a fan of. Sorry if anybody else is a fan of that. Because the commander's wife wanted to come in and do something and take over. And she was 22 years old, never experienced deployment. And as soon as the unit deployed, the FRG kind of fell apart because she had a new baby and she was panicking. But she was the one who wanted to be in charge of the FRG. Teresa decided that she was going to create an ad hoc version of the FRG. Everybody was invited, and we would go and do an event once a month just to check in with each other. We had group chats, everything. The channels were open, and she was supportive of the commander's wife and told everybody to still do whatever she offered, but she had this in place in case people were struggling.
Interesting. And for those in the audience for you out there in the audience who may or may not know what the FRG is, depending on what branch of service you come from, Family Readiness Group, it's basically the rear deployment or the rear detachment family members who are there while their family members are forward deployed, and they kind of they're the glue of the community essentially for the unit. So.
Sometimes they're old. No, I'm just going to get into the drama of it. It can be a little bit dramaful, but everybody experiences the loss of their significant other for deployment differently, and that is definitely where you get to see the gamut of that emotion.
Yeah. I say glue. It could be water-based glue as well. So just throw that out there.
The Elmer stick glue from our childhood.
Let me ask you about college education. We discussed it a little bit and brought it up a little bit, but as far as going outside of the military into the civilian sector, transitioning over to civilian life, how important do you think a college degree is in the business world or in business in general?
First of all, I'm going to do my soapbox. I don't think college is for everybody. When you come out of school, whether it's a high school or you come out of the military service, if you are not ready for college and don't know what you want to do, don't spend the money on it. Your GI Bill, if you've served, you have the ability to use that for a certain length of time. With the post 9/11, there's more money. Plus, there's a couple other programs out there where you can get money. If there's something that interests you, go ahead, get your education, learn from it, grow from it. If there's a chance to do an internship or anything like that, something you like, take advantage of it. An internship is huge. You can see if you really like it or if it's just you like it on TV. Is it something, if you want to be a mechanic, be a mechanic. You can get the certifications through the military, but a lot of times they'll do the certification if you can get to a garage or some place where they actually just take you through the steps of how they do it, and then they'll take you through their certifications. If you're a marketing person, you don't necessarily need the education for marketing. There's all sorts of certificates that you can do for free most of the time. But also, it's just about getting in the thick of it like it was in the military. You don't have to have an education. But if you're going to do an education, use all the benefits. Use absolutely all of it, because if you don't use it, it just goes away. It's your entitlement. You're entitled to it, and take advantage of it. I did it, and I just found out that with my VA claim and then my husband's stuff, that I've got 10,000 more to go to school with. So I love school, so I'm going to go get some more certifications.
Coming from a marketing perspective, what kind of certifications would you recommend for somebody who wants to go down the marketing path?
The marketing path, don't do the courses like that. You'll see all these online courses as far as from this guru or that guru, unless you really gravitate to the guru. Spend your money on that. But most of the time, those aren't covered under GI Bill or anything like that. But there are most of the major education systems like Harvard. It's Harvard, Yale. All of the big schools, the top 10 that you hear their names everywhere, they all are offering certifications. Penn State is, Ohio State, and a couple others. In UT Austin, I should say that because it's 30 minutes from my house, that are in analytics and how to use the analytics to drive your marketing plan and marketing things. Those are the information you actually need. Most people think that all they have to do is take a camera and video themselves. Yes, you can get money that way. I'm not going to knock it, but if you want to make it a career, you need to know the ins and outs and how data drives your decision making. It's the same stuff we did in the military. Absolutely the same stuff. When you look at creating a marketing strategy plan for a year, where do you want to be at the end of the year, and you backwards plan accordingly. And it took a little bit for me to realize that that's how you had to do it. And once I realized, this is just like creating, your strategic plan in the military. How am I going to get to here? What am I going to do for this mission? It's the same thing. You just do it at a different scale, and you have to make sure that you're hitting all the moving parts, not just the moving parts you think are important.
And on the same lines, how would you equate that to a personal brand for somebody who's coming out? Like we like to push people in the direction of LinkedIn, and I know, again, it's just like college. It's not for everybody, but it is certainly a way to get yourself in front of potential employers, potential businesses. Would you have any kind of marketing strategies that you know of for business that can be then applied or overlaid to somebody's personal brand if they're thinking about personal brand, or even if you think personal brand is not important, or if it is? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I'm a personal brand, do it. Get yourself a personal brand because you want something that becomes synonymous with you. So the biggest thing is authenticity. Making sure that it is you. You're not, even if you get on ChatGPT and you're coming up with, use it for your ideas, don't use it for your end and your outcome. So you can put in ChatGPT, you can prompt it to do whatever you want it to do. But the big thing is make sure the photos looks like you, it's clear, it's not some random image of nothing. if you're offering something, make sure you put that you are X kind of guru, or this is what I do. If you are looking for a job, let people know you're looking for a job. But tell them what you can do. How can you drive results for their business is the biggest thing. If you're going to do anything in marketing, what results do you bring for somebody who wants to hire you to do business for them or to be part of their business? What are the results you can bring? People want to know how you help them, not all your accolades. Accolades are great to support the statement, but they aren't the statement.
Yeah. I wish people would take that advice when they write those little bifold brochures that they give out at their retirement ceremonies, or if they're having some kind of promotion ceremony or something where they have the whole bio there, like all the accolades. Instead, just tell us what you actually are doing moving forward.
I think that is a really good thing to say. I think we should do that, but I also think that in the military we're taught to think about those accolades and all those great things that you've done. But that should just be your jumping off point. That shouldn't be, I've done all this. What have you done for me lately?
Right.
I don't remember who sang that song, but what have you done for me lately, or what can you do for me? If I'm going to hire somebody to come in and help me with anything in my business, you can give me a case study to support the statements you're saying. I don't need the case study right up front. I need you to say, I'm an excellent XYZ, and here are the reasons why I can say that I'm an excellent XYZ.
If you were allotted, let's say, 30 minutes at the local transition office for a group of military members, they could be retiring, they could be E4 mafia getting out after a couple of years, or anywhere in between that spectrum, and you got 30 minutes to sit in front of them, or let's just say 20 minutes. Let's call it a TED Talk of transition. What would be your thesis for that talk, for that 20-minute talk, and maybe a couple bullet points that you would hit along the way for people to understand that they're important things to think about?
You're not done yet would be the thesis title. And we'd start the first few minutes and we would say, where are you at? Where do you want to go? And then we get into how do we develop that? And it goes back to what we were just, you've got to think about, where do you want to be in a year? When do you want to retire? When do you want to retire in life so that you could sit at the beach and cast your fishing pole? Or lay in the sun next to your husband, whatever. I'm using traditional lines. Like, what age do you want to be? Do you want to be 42, 45, 50? What is it that you want to do to get there? What brings you joy? Really, I don't feel like I go to work today. I don't feel like I go to work. I pick up my computer sometimes on the weekends and I still don't feel like I do work because I'm doing what I enjoy. And I want, in the end, if you want to live a fulfilled life, you want to fill it with the people you love and do the things that you love. And once you leave the military, most people have 20, 30, 40 years left to go. What do you want to do in that? And I hope it's not working for that whole time. But some people might be. Some work brings them, if they think it's work or if they don't think it's work. I haven't fully thought all of that out, but it would definitely be, where are you? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? How do we get there? I would do the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And that's like, break that down into the bigger picture of what do you want out of life? Because at 22, you've got hopefully 60 plus years left to go. And that's if you got in at 18, you're in E4, leaving at 22, right? 4 years in, you should be E4, maybe E5. I love that you called it E4 Mafia. But it would also depend on who's in the room. Because I do think when you're talking to an E4, it's different. At E4, that's 22 to 26, and you've got, you got the officers are the same, and then you've got the E7 plus that are coming out at 20 years. You talk to them a little bit differently. They've experienced a little bit more life, but they're actually, even though maturity wise, they're almost still the same person, same age, same everything. Because a lot of people stunt some of their maturity when they go into the military. Because the maturity is forced upon them in a way that they think they're maturing, but they're still emotionally stuck at whatever age they join the military.
That's an interesting point. So if you had the choice, who would you rather give the talk to, the senior folks that are retiring, or the ones that are getting out after just their first or second term?
Actually, that would depend on the day. I really do like talking to old souls, so usually the older people, and to express that, life isn't done just because you've left the military. Like, where is it that we want to be? What age? Do you want to be a happy grandma and grandpa? Do you want to, all those kind of things we could dive into. But career-wise, like, what brings you joy? What is that one thing that sat back here the whole time you're in the military and you said, oh, if I would have done, I could be here? What is that? And there would be times that we'd talk, there'd be times that we'd do that, but also, how do you define your life plan? Not in the life coaching mindset, but what is the business of your life? How do you develop that plan? Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? How do you want to get there? Do you want to travel? Okay, well, traveling's expensive, especially now. How much do you need? How many trips a year do you want to take? Where do you want to go? We got to think about all that money and what that's going to cost in order to be able to do that. Or do you find a career that's portable, that you can travel and you can become nomads? There's like all sorts of nomad groups. We could help you join a nomad group so that you could travel the world, see the world, but still get to work and enjoy. But I do know many people who retire from the military. There's a period of 5 to 7 years where they don't want to travel because they've done enough traveling, depending on where they've been stationed. But as a whole, yeah. And then the younger people, I would, the big thing for them is what brings you joy. I do want them to get off video games, so that's my old lady rant, because I think, especially the people who have experienced combat, you're retriggering your responses, and that's a non-doctor's thing. That's just my own soapbox. They're retriggering themselves every time they're playing those hostile video games, and then they also become numb to it, and there's something about them that sucks them in for life. It's kind of like Facebook or anything like that. You've just got to think of how you want it to fit into your life, and what do you want in your life. And this is a blessing and a curse all in the same thing for that. And the younger generation can't live without it. Do you remember when you were told, be home when the lights were on? You didn't have to get a text to get home.
Yeah, I grew up in the latchkey kid sort of environment where that was the goal, was to try to stay out as late as possible before the lights actually came on. And when they did come on, then you kind of slowly walked back to the house. Well, you probably were running, depending on your parents' reaction when you got back. But
you always had that one friend whose parent had that whistle, like the, and you knew you had to be home.
Yeah,
people were looking.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting going forward, especially with this podcast and with what I'm doing, as far as seeing not only the retirees kind of changing over time as we start to go forward in time, but also like how the retirement benefits go. Like, now you get a pension, but maybe 5 or 10 years from now, we'll start to see the first blended retirement cases and see how that turns out, with them kind of choosing their destiny by depending on how much money they put away and how much was in TSP, the thrift savings plan, and then seeing how that actually works out. So I will say this for the younger generations before us, certainly, they have different choices than we had as kids. Like we may or may not have grown up with computers or the internet. I personally grew up with the internet basically my whole life from its inception until now. And that was a little bit odd at the time because it wasn't a thing for, 10 or 20 years before. But that whole time I'd been experiencing it. I'd been exposed to it. Now, today's generations moving forward, like they grow up with this device in their hands, right? They literally have the whole entire knowledge of humanity at their fingertips, and it's very, very fast, and it's a lot to take in. It's a lot of information. It's the same kind of thing that happens when you had mentioned something about when we talked about the 5 people in your circle or the smaller concentric circles around you. Like there's a certain number of scientifically studied, there's a certain number of people that can be in one group in one area comfortably to have a peaceful life. And when you start to expand that out and you create these big cities and these big countries and things like that, then there's nuances that happen, right? There's different kind of things that happen. And that's just a biological, like scientific kind of thing. I'm not the one that did the scientific research or studied it, and I'm not the expert at any of that stuff. But from my understanding of it, like there's a certain threshold of information, certain threshold of the amount of people that you can spend time with, that you can be in front of. So it's going to be interesting moving forward to see, but the generations now that are going through the military or coming out of the military, they've definitely got tons more choices, right? They do have the choice to pick up the phone and start making videos and create brand deals on TikTok, or if TikTok gets banned,
or
whatever the next
Instagram
thing
Reels
is.
or Facebook Reels or YouTube. Reddit, all those. Yeah.
That's why it's interesting that you've got a marketing background and you do stuff to help veterans with their marketing, with their business, and that the question about the personal brand and things like that, like I feel like it's just a matter of time before that becomes the actual norm, right? The boomers are moving out of the way. They're getting too old, hopefully, retiring and making way for the X generation to come in and start filling some of those roles. And then the Gen Z and the generations beyond that to start moving into the adulthood and taking over some of those roles as well. But I feel like that's kind of going to be the norm as we start to continue to move forward. Things start to get more, I want to say bifurcated, but that's a big word and I really don't want to use it. They start to get more division of labor throughout different jobs and different industries and things like that. So
I agree with you on the personal brand, and I actually think it's going to happen within the next 2 to 5 years. I think you're going to see the personal brand takes the forefront. Because one of the great things about a personal brand is if you truly lead it with authenticity, you're really hitting the nail on the head. But part of that authenticity is people need to see the wins and the losses. It can't always be wins. Everything isn't going to be spit shine and perfect and polished. People need to see the bloopers. Because if not, how do they know that it's real and it's authentic? I mean,
yeah, and I also wanted to ask you as well, because I know when a lot of people hear this and they hear like personal brand, they're like, oh, well, there's this pie in the sky kind of idea of what a personal brand actually is or what those words even actually mean. But for a normal, like regular person, like a normal person who just uses normal internet, does normal Facebook things or whatever social media platform they're on, is there a difference between, say, the influencer who's on Instagram who has 1 billion followers versus the regular person who's coming off of active duty, who's starting to figure out their career path, and through that career path they want to build like a personal kind of brand? Does it have to be glamorous? Like, what does that look like for
it doesn't have to be glamorous. That's what I love about a personal brand. If you look at most of those influencers, they're actually making pennies on the dollar. But they're doing what they love and they get a lot of free stuff. And when they have 100,000 followers is when they might start making a little bit of money. So people tend to think influencer marketing, they're making money early on. You're not. You're getting stuff. You're getting stuff in return for a review. If you want to do that, you can already start that. Just get on Amazon, become an Amazon affiliate, and do reviews of products. In fact, if you do enough reviews of the products that you get, especially if you do video and photo, they're going to offer you to be part of their affiliate program. You can do that with another one is Audible, but there's part of the same system. There's programs out there that you can get into for that kind of stuff, but that seriously, you're getting stuff, which for many people that means if they do the stuff, then they don't have it doesn't have to come out of their income. But you'll see a lot of people that do influencer marketing say they're a digital marketer. They are, because they're an influencer, but they're not actually getting into the meat and potatoes behind what's drawing attention. Most of them are following they're going to look at big picture, big influencers and duplicate and triplicate what they're doing. And they do that for across the board. I've done a little bit of influencer marketing as far as for backpack company and some other things. And really all you get is an attaboy. When we're talking military lingo, for that, you're just getting an attaboy. You're getting your free backpack that you signed up for so that you can take 15 photos and you get a thanks because you got your free backpack. So you're giving up your image and your likeness for someone else's stuff. So you gotta, if that fits within your ethos and who you are, that's awesome. It just felt icky to me. It didn't feel authentic to me, so that wouldn't be a brand that wouldn't be how I would want to present myself.
Yeah, and as far as authenticity goes, I kind of want to peel back the onion a little bit and open up your story as well, as far as what you do and how you are able to leave an impact on the veteran community as a whole, and what kind of like your average day working with veterans looks like.
So it's kind of awesome doing what I do because I get to work from home. This is my office. This is a room this is all me. Not very clean, but it's all me. And the best part about it is, I wake up when I want to wake up. Actually, no, I get up. I have a friend that we get on who's a military spouse, and we get on and we do a power hour in the morning because as business owners, we spend a lot of time in our business and no time on our business. So when you stop spending time on your business, you stop generating leads, you stop paying attention to your finances, all that stuff. So in those 2 hours, we can't work in our business or do any client work. We have to work on our business. I just switched all myself and all my clients over to Go High Level, which I don't know if you've heard about them, but it's an awesome software that you run all your marketing platforms through. If you want access, let me know, John, and I can set you up a sub account so you can check it out. But it's an amazing platform that helps you generate all the workflows, and you can create landing pages, funnels, website, do all your marketing, pre-plan all your social media, all that stuff. You can do all that from that platform. So I've spent the last 3 weeks updating all my workflows, making sure all my workflows are doing work for me so it can work behind the scenes so that I can spend the time generating leads. And when I generate the leads by talking to veterans and being in veteran groups, I can put them into whatever suits them and how we can serve them the best. And then from there on, I do client work. I spend a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there. I time block because I find that's the most effective for me, because I can spend 1 to 2 hours on something that I know needs to have my priority focus, and I put that in the hot spot of the day. And for me, that's in the morning from 9 to 11 is my sweet spot of getting work done. So if it's working on a strategy or something like that where I need ultimate focus, that's when I do it. And then I go from there to then throughout the day, I do other things. I have a couple client meetings that are weekly. And then other than that, I spend time going out to the community because I live right outside for retired soldiers, they'll know it as Fort Hood. Now it's Fort Cavazos, which I think is actually, even though it'll always be Fort Hood in my mind, Cavazos was the first something. I'm not sure if it was an officer or sergeant major. First big, large Hispanic. You're looking it up right now. So
Oh yeah.
he was born in El Paso, Texas. So they named it after somebody that's from the state of Texas. At least that's what it tells me at the PX on the wall.
First Hispanic 4-star general.
There we go. That's a huge deal. So it's amazing that we named that, the largest base in the United States after him, and it's in his own state. So I think that's pretty freaking amazing. So anyways, we've got so many veteran groups around here. I'm in the Pink Berets. I'm part of the Red, White, and Blue community. Plus, there's just a lot of things that you can do and do outreach right here in the area. And I want to be able to do that here locally, but also expand that. So any clients that find me online, you're going to see there's advertisements on Facebook. That happens. You have to do that in order to get some outreach. But when I'm working with a client, I have 3 days a week that we do business intensive, and that's a whole way to bring somebody into our ecosystem. So a business intensive means we come in, we look at your business top to bottom and see where the holes are. Sometimes it's system and processes, sometimes it's your marketing. Usually if it's systems and processes, it's a matter of we're not documenting everything we're doing, so we're not sure where the accountability lies. So that's as simple as us building out either workflows, or we can develop, if you don't have something like Asana, ClickUp, Monday, those kind of things, we can come in and help you build out that board, and build out the whole systems and processes. It can be, for some people, it's a little pricey. It's $1,000, but if you decide you want to stay with us and use our marketing services or anything that we have to offer, we put that $1,000 towards that. So basically, you're paying us for the day, but if you decide you want to work with us long term, we then take that $1,000 and apply it to us doing your social media management, us doing your email marketing, us developing funnels for you, all of that stuff. And it makes it easier for all of us by us putting in into Go High Level, because that we can do almost all of that besides the actual project management software that we would use, whatever you prefer and whatever your team would use. We try to stay in the under 20 employee area because I have a team of 2 of us, 3 when you include my husband when he comes in, and he's a PMP and a Scrum Master. So he comes in, I develop it. I'm a Scrum Master as well. I develop everything, and then he comes in and he looks at it from a different set of eyes, and we adjust where it needs to go. So we can't, if we have more than 20 people for a company that's a little bit large for 3 people to manage, to try to get you results in a day, or at least to get you a plan in a day. So we come in, we ask a whole bunch of questions ahead of time, ask for access to things, and then the day of, we spend that, that we're yours from 8 a.m., 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. to ask questions to. We're developing your plan. We're looking at you specifically. We're not looking at any other businesses during that time. And then if it's marketing, it's usually message related, because we often are so in love with what we do that we're not talking to the people that we actually need to talk to. And we're not speaking in a language that they understand. And we're not using that results driven conversation. We're using the I conversation. So if we've got some ways we can pull the business owner out to look at what they're saying and what they're doing to make sure that they're actually communicating what they are. Plus, sometimes it actually does have to do with personal branding. What you're saying on your business page and what you're saying for your business doesn't match what you're saying on your personal page. So something to think about in general, to go back to our previous conversation, is when you're being authentically you got to be that way across the board. But also, you might think you're being funny and kiki by putting up certain memes and things, but ultimately it does reflect your brand and your business. So you got to think about all of that holistically when you're making little posts.
Yeah, it's a very tough line to walk, being public person and also being genuinely you. I think the one person that comes to mind for me that pulls that off in all aspects is like a Gary Vaynerchuk, right?
I was just gonna say it. Did you get his new book?
Yeah, I did. I'm reading it now.
I just got it. I'm gonna read it while we're on our trip.
Yeah, he definitely pulls it off, and that's one thing. Like, my kind of advice for people out there is, just be you, but understand that maybe who you are can come off abrasive, or maybe who you are can come off a little bit pompous or whatever. If you're genuine and you genuinely care about the person on the other end that you're speaking to, like if I genuinely care about who's out there, who I'm speaking to through this platform, that comes off in its own way, right? So it's you just have to be genuine to yourself, genuine to the person you're speaking to, and be empathetic and like kind and try to be nice. Like you can use cuss words and you can say loud things. I'm not a loud kind of in your face kind of person. I have friends that are, and they're very effective with that method, but that's genuine. That's because that's who they are, right? If I come out here and try to be all happy and animated and have these major fluctuations in my voice, that's just not who I am.
And it wouldn't come up, and then you wouldn't be gaining the trust, all those things. Being authentically you is so important. I like, that's always what I'm going to come back to. And that doesn't matter if you're 18 or 85. I'll give you till 25 because you really don't necessarily know who you are. I mean, at 18, you're still at home most of the time. You're still doing those kind of things. But once you've lived on your own for a little bit, you start to get your feet. And like I said earlier to you, like a lot of people are stunted at growth at 18 when they join, or whenever they join the military. If you haven't gotten to that point where you're comfortable with who you are, you got to sit with yourself and figure out who you are. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, is sit with yourself.
It's the absolute hardest thing to do.
And do you like yourself?
Right.
And if you don't, what is it that you don't like about yourself? A lot of times, I know when I was going through the journaling, that's what I was struggling with, was I didn't know if I even liked myself. And what is it that I didn't like about myself? And it was because I wasn't living my authentic, true to me self. I was living to please other people. We all ebb and flow on people pleasing, but I was definitely living in the people pleasing phase.
Since you brought it up, I want to ask you if there's a book or books that you highly, highly recommend, or maybe that you've gifted to people over the years, or that have just really, really stuck out in your mind that you've read. It sounds like you read a few books. So,
I've got a lot of books, but the most recent one that I've gifted a lot of people and really had an impact is 10x is better than 2x.
Grant Cardone?
No, that Grant Cardone's 10x is pretty good. Looks like it. It's in here somewhere.
Yeah, it's a problem with books and bookshelves.
I've got so many books. It's by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. They've got a whole series. This is the latest, and it's the best written. But if you want to get into marketing, anything Russell Brunson related is pretty good. He gives you enough to get you roped in. But if you understand marketing, you'll be able to take what he's got and funnel it down. Ironic funnel for ClickFunnels, but you'll be able to take it and make it work for you. But this one is really good because the whole idea is making a 2x change. You're doing minute little things, but you're always the same. You go through the same steps. You do this, you do that, and you just make the 2x changes. But if you want to make a big impact in your life, you need to make a 10x change, because you have to change how you think about things and how you process things to get to the 10x. And oftentimes the growth is exponential and it's quicker because you had to change all the things you had to do about it. It's sometimes he's like, you have to backwards plan. Sometimes he's like, you throw it to the wind and you you let the answers come to you. You just know that's where you want to get to. But the Audible book is pretty good. They read it. I got into, what's his name? That's he's a Marine, he has a Delta, and a whole bunch of other things. He's an inspirational speaker, and I'm seeing his face, and I can't think of it. I listen to all of his audiobooks.
David Goggins?
Say again?
David Goggins?
Yes. I was going to say Daniel Goggins, and I knew that wasn't right, so I wasn't going to go there. But I stumbled upon him through one of my friends, and I binged him for a period of time. He's a little too aggressive for me sometimes. I have to be in the mood to process what he has to say, but his intent is amazing, and it kind of goes. This is a similar feel, but not the same language. Where if you want this, you have to just go for it, and you have to go big. Because if you don't go big, you're not ever going to get there, because you're constantly going to just be doing the little tweaks to get there. So I do not recommend listening to David Goggins when you are on a Spartan. Because I do Spartan races. That's been after I quit or retired from roller derby, after 14 years. I needed something that would make me feel competitive and make me want to do things, and I love it because I'm only competitive with me, and this is the first time in my life I'm only competitive with me. And I did one of the long races, which is the 21K, and I had my iPod or my phone on shuffle, and it got stuck on his books, and that is not what you want to listen to when you're embrace the suck. Well, yeah, I get it. I am embracing that, but you hit that mode where you're like, this isn't what I want to listen to. But as a whole, his stuff is pretty good. I liked listening to him on Audible better than I actually liked reading his books, because you hear his inflection in it. It's not you anticipating what his inflections are. But other than that, those are the two as of late. I've got a list of like 108 books that I like absolutely value, and it's in my resource section, so I can share that with you if you want me to, because it's there's some really good ones, and then there's some that you read and you're like, okay, that didn't have the impact I thought it was going to. Another one, it's by Michelle Rockwood, Joyful Selling: A Better Way to Yes, and it's just using the heart-centered way of selling versus the bro selling. And then Jennifer Dawn just came out with Apple Stand. She's one of my clients, and the book is amazing. It's a quick read. I think I read it in an hour. It made it to a best-selling for small business owners, and it's just kind of creating their roadmap to success. So if you want to do it on your own and you want to figure it out, and you just need somebody to kind of give you the steps, that's a really good book.
Awesome. Great. I will definitely make sure we get those in the show notes.
Yeah. This is the one I share with people. When I went to ClickFunnels Live last year, Dr. Benjamin Hardy spoke, and they were giving out books, and nobody was sitting in. There was a couple seats that were missing around me, and he said, if there's empty seats, take the books. So I took the books, had him sign them all, and I've been giving them out to people.
Nice. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming close on time. Wow. And like I told you, hour and a half goes by and you're like, what the hell just happened?
Mm-hmm. Time warp.
Time warp. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to maybe touch on, or anything you want to bring up?
Yes, I do have one thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you know you're getting out or you're getting ready to leave an installation, start tracking all those medical things. If your foot's been bothering you, go get it seen. Get it documented, get it in the records. Biggest thing is, and I think John mentioned it earlier, is make sure it's documented. Make sure it's in the records, because that stuff does follow you.
In the bin.
Get a copy of everything. Keep a copy of everything. Even if it's not organized, keep it in a bin somewhere so you know where it is. If you've got a safe, put them in the safe so that way you don't have... I know the older soldiers had the fire in St. Louis or fire in Missouri somewhere where the paperwork all a lot of the Vietnam veterans. So the ones that were able to track their document and keep their documents and had their own copies, a lot of times my dad had microfiche. So he had his own documents. So when he was fighting some stuff with the VA for some issues that he had while he was in Korea, he was able to get everything that he needed because he had that documentation. If the VA says, give that to me, please give them a copy. You keep your own copy. Or you say, hey, I'll be back to give you some copies, and you go make some copies. Keep your own documents. That's why I say, you keep a set in your safe. Keep a set if you got a security box, put it there, and if at your mama's house too. Which is what I did for a while when we were moving around, so that way we didn't lose any paperwork. As anything I had, anything that came up, I'd make a copy and send it to my mom. If you're struggling, please go get help. I don't care who it is, but go get help. I know there's the suicide helplines and things like that. If it's not that severe, still talk to somebody. Journaling can help, but if it's something more than what journaling can do, please go talk to somebody. Your friends may not always be, unless they've served, may not be able to process some of the things you've been going through, especially if you've experienced things, because at times they will. I don't want to lessen anybody's PTSD. I'll put that out there, but they will equate things that you feel when your life was on the line to stubbing their toe. And those are two totally different PTSDs. There's two totally different traumatic responses. So they think it's going to feel like stubbing their toe when you're having a conversation about what you're struggling with. So talk to somebody that's qualified, or find a veteran that's experienced it, or go to the local VFW, whatever. People are there. They're willing to help. One of the guys that helped me out the most when my husband was on his last deployment, which was for COVID, was a friend of ours named Gordo. He's a Vietnam veteran. He sat down. He knew I was struggling, and we just talked. And he was the one who gave me the pointers on who to talk to at the VA to try to really get the help that I needed. So don't negate somebody's service and their value, but also recognize you're fighting your own battle, and there are people that can help you out. You don't have to be in it alone, even if it's your own battle.
That's right. Yeah, and I'll second that motion. For you out there in the audience listening or watching, you absolutely have a community behind you, whether it's this community, your local community, your VFW, whatever it happens to be. Like, there's a community out there. You mentioned the Veterans Helpline that's available. There's other different ways to get help as well. I'm actually reaching out to an organization right now to see if they want to come and be part of this experience as maybe a sponsor of the show, because I think they're doing some really, really great work as well. So there's definitely a community out there for you, and you just got to find that community and then spend some time with them. And I know we're not all social butterflies, myself included. I can only take so much social interaction, and then I have to decompress for like 6 hours after that. So yeah, find your tribe, find your battle buddy, find the person who you can lean on if you need somebody to lean on, or be that person for somebody else. Definitely.
Yeah, and the last one would be females. The Pink Berets are an amazing organization for female soldiers to network with. And that, when you look at the mission and what's behind it, they started because, one, they didn't necessarily feel like they had a place in some of the other things, but some had experienced sexual assault and things while they were in the military. So they were trying to create a safe place for female veterans to talk about what they were experiencing while they served and what they've experienced since. So it's a great group for those female soldiers that need to have people that kind of understand what they've been going through.
Awesome. Tons and tons of resources out there. I love it. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. More resources, exactly. More resources.
The more we share, the better it is for all of us.
That's right. So just to wrap it up, first, thank you again for taking the time to be here. Thank you for taking your time out. I know I got you up out of bed really, really early, but I definitely appreciate you being here with me sharing the time with me, spending time having this conversation. Is there anywhere that you would point anybody to if they want to learn more about you, what you're doing, your business venture, or your social medias or anything like that?
Debella Deball, everything is pretty much me, and that's DEBELLA.com. And then there's DebellaDeballDesigns.com. That's the more, when we talk, the DebellaDeball.com is kind of my brochure of everything we do. But if you really want to just come in and talk about the business intensive, or if you want to bring us in, or you just want to have a strategy chat, it's the DebellaDeballDesigns.com. And that is, our focus is helping veterans, like I said. If you want to find me on social, it's Debella Deball. My big one is LinkedIn right now. That's where I've been spending a lot of time because I think that that's where I can feel like it can be my authentic self. Lisa L. Benson on Facebook is my personal one. Please feel free to friend me on there. I really just put up punny things in the morning. I've got a punny calendar, like they're pre-scheduled, but this is the kind of stuff that I put up. You know, and you just need something light in the day. Let us always do our best is what that says. And just something different to kind of change up your feed. Because so often it's kind of all over the place. And for me, that's funny. My husband's a dad joke guy, so that's kind of my answer to his dad joke. I was at the PX, saw the calendar, and fell in love, so I got it. And then, any of those where you see Debella Deball. Some of them you'll see John Debella. That's actually a promoter out of Philadelphia. That's not me, but everything else is pretty much me.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll definitely look for the right one. Just look for her picture. You'll find her.
Yep.
You'll find Lisa out there. All right. So thank you for your time and your ears and your eyeballs out there in the internet, for you, the audience member, for paying attention, watching. I hope you got something out of this. I hope it brought you some value. We'll be leaving links to everything that we talked about in the show notes below. And be sure to check us out everywhere you consume podcasts, or if you're on YouTube and you want to see our smiling faces, you can check us out there. And you can also check us out on Wreaths Across America Radio on Wednesday evenings. They broadcast. We actually just did an interview last week. Myself and Victor, we did a live interview with them. They were just interviewing all the people that are on the shows, different shows that they broadcast. So great organization. They're doing great things. They do a lot of wreath laying across the country. So check them out as well. And if you like what we're doing, give us a like and a subscribe. We would love to have your support. We're trying to get to that 1K so we can go out to the Military Influencers Conference in September. Myself and Victor live in person on the ground, meeting in person for the first time. So that'll be interesting. So thank you very much, and we will catch you in the next episode.